We are less than 10 weeks from the midterm elections, and typically this is the time when party leaders and also campaigns are making a lot of those final strategic decisions about how best to deploy their resources ahead of November. It's a constant discussion, but this is a big decision period. And while Donald Trump's agenda is unpopular and his approval rating is at historic lows, he does have a whole lot of money that could help Republicans in tough races if he wanted to use it in a wise way. The pro-Trump super PAC called MAGA Inc. is currently sitting on more than $400 million. And The Atlantic is out with new reporting about how Trump wants his allies to spend that money in the lead up to Election Day. And guess what, everyone? It's kind of a shockingly stupid plan. Here's what it says. Here's what the story says, quote, rather than distance himself from congressional elections, the preference of some Republican candidates in swing districts, I would note, Trump has argued that he can drive turnout in those races by making himself the center of the conversation. The president ordered a series of television advertisements about his own record. He suggested that the ad makers mine his own on-camera statements as building blocks. Go look at the clips, the president reportedly told his team. So basically, Trump wants to insert himself and his very unpopular agenda into this midterm election in swing districts, right at the time when Republicans are doing, a lot of them are doing everything they can to run away from him. He wants his lackeys to go look at the clips of him over the past 2 years and pick a few moments to remind voters of right before the midterms. So we decided we'd help the folks over at MAGA Inc. out. We're going to help them out a little bit by looking at some of those clips ourselves. And here's what we found.
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls.
I don't care about the midterms.
I don't think about American financial situation.
I don't want to drive housing prices down. I want to drive housing prices up. You know what I really love? I love the inflation.
For you to pay a tiny little bit more for your gasoline, when you have to pay a little bit more, you're at $4. It's okay. I mean, it's, I'll never apologize. I did the right thing.
I'm Jen Psaki, and I approve this message, all of that. And there's more where that came from. Joining me now is my friend and former boss, David Plouffe. He served as a campaign manager and senior advisor to Barack Obama, who's also a senior advisor to Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, and he did a bazillion campaigns before all of that. Well, let me start with this. There's so many things I want to ask you about because we're so close to the election. But I just want to start with that strategy from the White House to make the midterms all about Donald Trump. Now, if the president is very popular, fair, he does still have a hold on his base, which is a percentage of the electorate. Most Democratic candidates in swing districts are certainly probably hoping they run with this. But what do you think of it?
Well, Jen, I agree with you. I mean, it would appear at first glance and maybe second glance like kind of historical political malpractice. And the only thing worse than being a president when you're presiding over the country, when people are very unhappy, you're unpopular, they think you're doing a bad job, is trying to convince people they're wrong and you're right. So we saw a little bit of this, with Bidenomics in the last administration. You remember back in 2012 when Barack Obama won re-election in a really tough economic climate, we were very careful not to get too far beyond where the voters would accept. So I think it's a disastrous strategy. Now, I have learned it's always important when in any competitive environment or endeavor, when your opponent's doing something that you think is dumb, to step back and say, well, what maybe do they see that we don't see? And the only thing, and it's a stretch, would be to say maybe in some of these deep red states, or at least reddish states like Ohio and Iowa and Alaska, that maybe some Trump positives might help both with vote share and turnout. I think that's very unlikely. So I think this is not strategy. This is ego. And as we've always seen, even if there's advisors telling him it's the wrong thing to do, no one's able to keep him from self-immolating. So, I think we've all been worried about his war chest. But if they're going to spend it in this way, it actually may be an in-kind contribution to Democrats, pleasantly so.
It certainly may be. They're going to be welcoming the ads in some places, but that's a very interesting point. It's always important to be clear-eyed going this close to an election. So everyone at home is wondering where things sit, right? Trump is underwater on every issue. We have seen a lot of enthusiasm in special elections and primaries. Democrats are also dealing with a whole lot of gerrymandering, making seats less competitive in some places. Donald Trump has a lot of money at his disposal. So just you think about all these factors you have through so many election cycles. You're a data guy, too. Level set for us. Where do things sit for House control? How many could swing? What's the range in your view? And same with the Senate.
Well, interestingly enough, there's probably a little more play in the Senate because of just the natural state of so few competitive House districts and then the gerrymandering play where the Republicans did net. I think our ceiling is more limited than we saw back in 2006 or 2008 or even 2018. But obviously, we've got very strong tailwinds. The Senate, I think there's more play there. There are more seats that potentially could be won here than I think anybody would have thought at the beginning of the cycle. We've got strong candidates in many of them. That's what's going to take in some of the House districts on the outer edge of what's possible, and certainly in a bunch of these Senate races. It's going to come down to just not the natural atmospherics, which are undeniably in Democrats' favor. It's going to be candidates doing some special things and outperforming what the average Democrat might be able to do. So that's, again, back to where this Trump strategy on ads, again, maybe, and they need help on turnout. So maybe they think it's going to help them on turnout. But generally, seeing him out there telling people how great things are when everybody think things are terrible, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on Republicans who are running for the House and Senate. They're going to have to respond to these ads. Do you agree with the president saying everything's okay and that inflation doesn't matter and we should be willing to pay more in gas for this ridiculously ill-advised Iran war? It's going to resurface all these things. So it's not just the ads themselves. It's that it's going to add to an already really tough environment. So, but, Jen, my view is you and I have been through a lot of elections. And sometimes as a party, you have really bad headwinds and you're just trying to hold on. Sometimes you have tailwinds. This is a tailwind election. We don't know what it's going to be like in 28 or 30. So if you're a Democrat, you want to grab every victory you can in this good environment. Because if we lose, even if we win the House, you're going to want to be at that upper range. Same thing in the Senate, particularly in the Senate, where I think for a bunch of different reasons, none of them good in terms of our state of our democracy, really for the next 10 to 12 years, it's going to be really important for Democrats to hold power much more often than not.
I remember well in 2006, we had never even, I worked at the DCCC, we'd never even talked to some of the candidates who won. That is a tailwind year and a different kind of year in terms of House seats. Let me ask you about the Senate. We talk about the key races a lot on this show. We talk about Michigan, Ohio, Georgia, Iowa, all key ones, North Carolina. And it may one of them may be the answer here, but is there a race you're watching in the Senate that you don't think's getting enough attention, that with tailwinds, with good candidates, with, certain dynamics out there we should be paying more attention to?
Well, it's really interesting. And, I was very involved in 2006 as well. And, it was wild on election night that there were Democrats who won that weren't on anybody's radar screen, that the DCCC hadn't even spent money to support. I think that's not going to be the case in the House this year. I think the case in the Senate, Jen, is so, when you think about a presidential race and getting to 270 electoral votes, you always want to have multiple pathways to get there. You don't want to be reliant on winning one state or two. I think the same thing's true in the Senate. And the good news for Democrats is we have a lot of states in play. So, yeah, I think we definitely, Maine's key. You got to win Maine. Iowa and Ohio both. I think at the beginning of the cycle, you said, well, they're going to be real stretches. We have a possibility to win one, maybe both. I think races like Kansas, like Nebraska, like Alaska, maybe even Mississippi, we're not going to win all of them. But boy, you take a lot of shots on goal and you're going to have more of the pucks, reach the net. And that's where we're at right now. So I think it's going to be really important, though, I would say, Jen, in Texas, Iowa, and Ohio. So those aren't those outer reach states I just mentioned, but they have been red states, sadly, for over a decade. And if they hold in there, and polling has its limitations, but if it looks like those races in mid-October look like they do today, because historically what you'll see is you might see Republicans come back home a little bit more in states like that. And if we still see this kind of margin, and we're hearing from the campaigns that they like what they're seeing in their internal data, I think that would be really, really important. Because, again, I always remind people, we can get excited in a red state when there's a poll that shows a Democrat 47-42. That's 89% of the vote. What's the 11% other going to do? And usually in red states for us, and the same thing is true in blue states for Republicans, you're not going to get most of that. Most of that's going to go to the party that's more comfortably, situated in those states. So that's the other thing I look at in all these Senate races, particularly stretch races. Do we look consistently our candidates at 49, 50, 51, 52? Mm-hmm. That's incredibly important in tough terrain that you're trying to win.
Yeah, you just reminded me, it's also important. And every time I talk to any of these candidates in red states, they always say this to me privately and sometimes on TV. They know people will come home. James Tallarico, Jon Ossoff, Sherrod Brown, they know Republicans are going to come home and that it's going to narrow, so nobody can freak out when that happens, too. It's just about getting more votes, always. David Plouffe, I could talk to you all day. We're going to talk to Amy Klobuchar, though, so I'm so grateful you were here. Thanks again for taking the time.